If you only have two possibilities to account for something and one of them is negated, the other one is validated, you don't even have to prove it's true. If you only have two possibilities and you negate one, by default, logical requirement, then the other is you only have God or no God options. That's what's called an absolute dichotomy, a non-impersonal set. You have certain things like absolute infinite, we won't get into those things. But at any rate, can the atheist perspective, or the atheist worldview, account for logic? And the answer ultimately in TAG is, I'm not going to go into details, the answer is no, it cannot.
It can account for logic. In my mind, just for the sake of clarity, maybe this language hasn't been used before, but in order to getting proper inference out of statements, right? That's something that we made up. That's, whether you believe in actually statements like A is not A, and so on and so forth. And then there's that to which logical absolutes, the statements, is out there, but really what they refer to is the consistent behavior of things that exist. Now, is that what you're asking needs to be accounted for?
Run off of, or under the guideship of material properties, physics, chemistry, reactions, things like this. Now, the atheistic worldview cannot account for logical processes even. Now, for you to say atheism is true, there is no God. If atheism is true, a necessary presupposition within atheism is that the universe and all things within the universe operate under the laws of physics and or chemistry. Motion, matter, things like that. The human mind can be nothing more than reason to trust logical inference. You understand? Because if chemical reactions are what leads someone to think of what proper inference is, and logic is the process of proper inference, if that's all it is, and if we are materialistic, or your materialistic worldview is assumed, then you cannot trust logic to be logical, because it's nothing more than the result of chemical reactions. And with chemical reactions, you cannot produce logical inferences and logical necessities.
Okay, so you're saying that in order for a mind to conceive of a concept or statement which is absolute, and by absolute I mean applies throughout all time and throughout all space, or maybe absolutely, that mind would have to itself be absolute and transcendent?
Well, that's not what I said. We haven't gotten to that point. I'm trying to demonstrate that the atheistic perspective is incapable of offering even a rational, how to put this, it can't even account for rationality. Now look, physicalism, materialism, this is the atheistic's necessary worldview. And what it means is that all the things in the universe, us included, we are subsets of all the physical properties of the universe. We're a necessary finite subset.
Somebody's got a mic on.
All the properties that exist in the universe. The brains that we use, in fact, the very act of observation.
No, we're okay. Yeah, we don't hear it that point.
I'm here at home, and my kid's just got the shower on. It just blares a loud, high pitch through the wall. Can you guys hear that? That's the reason to trust logic in your mind. It'd be nothing more than chemical reactions. You could believe something false and not know it, because the chemical reactions would force you to believe that. So the atheistic world does not lead us to rationality, but to irrationality.
Okay, so that's your thesis. That's your premise. That's what you want to eventually work toward, is that a brain that is purely physical and materialistic cannot have logical thoughts. What I really want to get to is making a distinction between logic, which is a methodology, a human-created methodology for deriving proper inference from statements, and then you've got logical absolutes, which are statements themselves, like you opened with was saying that what logical absolutes refer to, by the way that I'm defining it, cannot be accounted for by an atheistic worldview. Now, what is it to which logical absolutes refer?
I'm not sure I understand your question. What logical absolutes refer to, like, is a proper inference. To set a proper inference, and by necessity it's a mental process. Logic cannot exist without a mind. But these things that are logical absolutes, which are the undergirding principles by which logical processes occur, are themselves, now in this area, I'm going to go with what you're saying, in this area of the discussion, the issue is, what's the nature of these logical absolutes? Now, sure, they reflect reality. We know that they reflect reality. That's not a problem. But what's their nature and their essence? Are they conceptual by nature? How many here would say logical absolutes are not conceptual by nature? I mean, logic.
You had your hand up now. You just kind of do that. That's cool.
Yeah, sometimes if there's different people talking, just lets you know who's in line.
Logic.
I would like to answer that. I would say that logical absolutes, which are statements, like A is A, are conceptual. A statement is conceptual. They exist in the mind. A, that A is always A. A, that A is not A. That's a statement that's conceptual. So the statement A is conceptual by nature. That's not what concerns me. What I'm interested in is what that statement saying about reality, what that statement is describing about reality. And what it describes about reality is not an entity, behavior of all entities to be what they are and not what they are not, regardless of whether or not there's consciousness there to it. So what I'm asking is, are you saying that atheism cannot account for the consistent behavior of all things that exist?
All right. Your objection is a very common one from atheists, and it's kind of difficult to answer, not because the answer isn't possible, but because expressing it in an understandable way for people is what's the difficult part. And it does take a bit of thinking. Not that we want to hide truth behind thinking or do slick word plays, excuse me, but we want to find out, what truth is. So let me just kind of jump in here. Logical absolutes are statements. That's very good. A statement is by nature conceptual.
If you're going to say logical
absolutes are statements, then you're admitting that they're conceptual. Now, to say that A is always A is also a conceptual statement. Now, the first of logic is the law of identity, what you stated, that something is what it is not what it is. A is A. Saying 1 meter diameter carbon sphere, that the only thing that exists, period, no God, no mind, no nothing, just this one thing. All right? Is it true that it is what it is? Absolutely. But you see, when you say, is it true, the idea of assuming truth necessitates a mind. You cannot offer a treatment unless there is a mind. The problem here, almost done, the problem here is to say that even though something is what it is, and isn't what it isn't, and it exists, it doesn't necessitate a mind. Yes, it does. Because the statement of truth, which undergirds rationality and logic, requires a mind. All rationality does, logical absolutes do, and if there was no mind to existing, it wouldn't. It is actually begging the question. It's a logical fallacy. You're saying, now, I don't mean to be condescending. I don't think you'd think I would be. We've had several email dialogues, and, I think you're a pretty reasonable guy. I'm not trying to be condescending, but what you're doing is begging the question and assuming that the very natures of logic itself, which is conceptual in the process of the mind, is what it is, and yet if we have no mind, then it's still true. So you're saying we have to assume the validity of logic to negate the idea of logical processing without a mind in order to prove...
Okay. Well, first I want to say that I wasn't even getting to the point of making objections yet. I was actually just asking for a clarification. It's true that if you do that to make a truth statement, truth doesn't exist by itself. I'm sure you agree. Truth is a word describing the relationship between a statement and reality. In this reality, about that reality, and have it be true because you're making the statement in this reality. All truth is a relationship between a statement and reality. It would be reality. That would be what it is, regardless of whether or not there are any minds to perceive it. Really quick, let me just say, what I'm asking you is, what logical absolute to be itself and not itself. And I'm asking, is that behavior what needs to be accounted for, or is the statement A is A what needs to be...
Truth is a statement that requires a mind. If you want to particle, just the verses like this, but just for mental exercise. So this universal statement necessitates a mind behind a logical statement, that there is something over there that exists. Logical absolutes require a